Kara panted as she burst through the HOA office doors, her damp hair matted against her forehead. "You'll pay for this," she growled, eyes wild with rage. The smug board members watched in stunned silence as she slammed a pile of waterlogged documents onto the table. "I have the backup. You're finished." Kara's hands trembled as she unlocked the door to her townhouse. Just hours ago, her life had been turned upside down by the corrupt HOA board. She still couldn't believe what they had done. It had started innocently enough. As a new homeowner, Kara had attended her first HOA meeting, eager to get involved in the community. But from the moment she walked in, she sensed an air of hostility from the board members. "We've been having some issues with compliance," the HOA president, Mrs. Wilkins, had said, eyeing Kara warily. "We take these matters very seriously." Kara had no idea what they were talking about. She'd thoroughly reviewed the CC and Rs before moving in and was confident she was following all the rules. But as the meeting progressed, it became clear the board had singled her out. "Your lawn is an inch over the permitted height," one member accused. "And your front window trim is the wrong shade of white." Kara's jaw dropped. "But I—" "No excuses," Mrs. Wilkins interrupted, slamming her gavel. "You have 72 hours to remedy these violations or face the consequences." Kara spent the next 2 days frantically mowing and repainting, losing sleep over the petty demands. When the deadline arrived, she rushed to the HOA office, documents in hand, to prove her compliance. But as she approached the ornate fountain in the lobby, her heart sank. The board members were gathered around, grinning wickedly. "Looking for these?" Mrs. Wilkins taunted, dangling Kara's carefully organized files over the water. Kara's eyes widened in horror as the documents slipped from the woman's grasp, swirling down into the churning fountain below. "No," she cried, lunging forward, but the guards held her back. "Oops," Mrs. Wilkins said, smiling coldly. "Guess you're out of compliance after all." Kara felt the rage bubbling up inside her as she watched her evidence, her proof of innocence, disappear forever. She had to do something, but what? The board members simply laughed as she was escorted from the building, helpless to stop them. Kara paced her living room, mind racing. How could this be happening? She had played by the rules, followed every guideline to the letter, and still the HOA board had found a way to railroad her. Suddenly, a glimmer of hope sparked in her mind. "The backup," she murmured, rushing to her desk. Quickly, she rifled through the drawer until her fingers found the familiar manila envelope. Inside were copies of every document she had brought to the HOA office, her proof of compliance. With a sigh of relief, Kara sank into her chair. They may have destroyed the originals, but she still had the evidence. All she had to do was take them to court and expose the board's corruption. The next morning, Kara arrived at the courthouse, her heart pounding. As she approached the front desk, the clerk eyed her warily. "I need to file an emergency injunction against my HOA," Kara explained, trying to keep her voice steady. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" Kara took a deep breath and laid out the entire sordid affair. The petty citations, the demand for compliance, and the board's malicious destruction of her documents. By the end, the clerk's expression had softened. "I see," she said, handing Kara a stack of forms. "Fill these out, and I'll get the judge to review it as soon as possible." As Kara hurried to the nearest bench, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Finally, she would get the justice she deserved. The board members would be held accountable for their actions, and she would be vindicated. But just as she was about to put pen to paper, a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. Well, if it isn't our dear friend Kara," Mrs. Wilkins sneered, flanked by the rest of the HOA board. "I had a feeling we might be seeing you here." Kara's blood ran cold as the members advanced, their expressions menacing. "Stay away from me," she warned, clutching the envelope tightly. Mrs. Wilkins chuckled. "Oh, we're not going anywhere. In fact, I think it's time we had a little chat. Kara's heart pounded as the HOA board members closed in around her. Frantically, she scanned the busy courthouse lobby, searching for a way out. But the exits were blocked, and security was nowhere to be seen. "What do you want?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice from trembling. Mrs. Wilkins smiled coldly. "We just want to have a friendly little conversation, that's all." She gestured to the guards flanking her. "And make sure you cooperate." Kara's grip tightened on the envelope as the board members ushered her into a small alcove, away from prying eyes. "If this is about the lawsuit, forget it," she spat. "I have the backup documents, and I'm going to expose your corruption." The board members exchanged amused glances. "Oh, Kara," Mrs. Wilkins tutted, "you really don't understand how this works, do you?" She leaned in, her cold eyes boring into Kara's. "We run this town. The courts, the police, they all answer to us." Kara's blood ran cold. "You can't do this," she whispered, all traces of bravado vanishing. "Can't we?" Mrs. Wilkins sneered. "You know, we really didn't want to get our hands dirty. But you just couldn't let it go, could you?" She nodded to the guards. "Take care of her." Kara's eyes widened in terror as the burly men advanced, their fists clenched. Instinctively, she clutched the envelope to her chest, her last defense against the corrupt board. "No, please," she cried, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. The first blow struck her shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through her body. Kara stumbled, gasping, as the second punch landed squarely on her ribs. She could taste the metallic tang of blood in her mouth as she crumpled to the floor, the precious envelope slipping from her grasp. Through the haze of pain, she saw Mrs. Wilkins lean down, a triumphant smile on her face. "Better luck next time, dear," the woman purred, snatching up the envelope. With a casual flick of her wrist, she tossed it into a nearby trash can. Kara watched in horror as her last hope disappeared, consumed by the swirling papers and leftover fast food wrappers. She was alone, broken, and completely at the mercy of the HOA board. What would they do to her now? Kara curled up on the hard courthouse floor, clutching her bruised ribs. The HOA board members had left, their cruel laughter echoing in her ears. She was alone, her last hope of justice destroyed. Slowly, she pushed herself to a sitting position, wincing in pain. Through the haze of her tears, she caught sight of the trash can where Mrs. Wilkins had discarded the envelope. Summoning every ounce of strength, Kara dragged herself over and began to rummage through the contents. Her fingers grasped the familiar manila folder, and a surge of hope coursed through her. The backup documents were still there, untouched. Kara let out a shaky breath, cradling the envelope to her chest. Just then, a kind-looking older man approached, his brow furrowed with concern. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked, offering her a hand. Kara hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "Please, sir, you have to help me," she pleaded. "The HOA board, they attacked me and destroyed my evidence." The man's eyes widened in shock. Good heavens, that's outrageous. He glanced around the empty alcove, then lowered his voice. "Come with me, quickly." Kara followed him to a small office tucked away in the corner of the courthouse. As soon as the door closed behind them, the man turned to her, his expression grave. "My name is Judge Haywood," he said. "I've been keeping an eye on that HOA board for years. Their corruption runs deep, but I've never been able to get solid evidence." He placed a hand on Kara's shoulder, careful to avoid her bruises. "Until now." Kara's heart leaped. "You believe me?" she asked, hardly daring to hope. Judge Haywood nodded firmly. "Yes, my dear. And I'm going to make sure justice is served." He gestured to the envelope. "Show me what you've got." As Kara carefully laid out the backup documents, the judge's frown deepened. "This is exactly what I need to finally put a stop to their schemes," he murmured, trailing his fingers over the neatly organized files. Kara felt a surge of relief wash over her. At last, she'd have found an ally in her fight against the corrupt HOA board. With the judge's help, she might just have a chance. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice steady with determination. Judge Haywood leaned back in his chair, a glint of triumph in his eyes. "Now, my dear, we take them down." Kara sat in the judge's chambers, her fingers nervously tapping the armrest of the plush leather chair. After her devastating encounter with the HOA board, she hardly dared to hope that justice could prevail. But Judge Haywood's unwavering confidence had reignited the spark of determination within her. The judge leafed through the backup documents, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is exactly the evidence we need to bring down those corrupt board members," he murmured, his gaze meeting Kara's. "With your testimony and these records, we can expose their illegal activities and have them removed from office." Kara felt a surge of hope, but then a nagging doubt crept into her mind. "But what if they try to silence me again?" she asked, her voice trembling. "They made it clear they have influence over the courts and the police." Judge Haywood leaned forward, his expression grave. "I understand your concerns, my dear. The HOA board has been operating with impunity for far too long." He paused, then continued, "That's why we're going to have to take some extraordinary measures to ensure your safety and bring them to justice." Kara's brow furrowed. "What kind of measures?" The judge's lips twitched into a slight smile. "Well, for starters, I'm going to issue a sealed warrant for the arrest of the HOA board members on charges of destruction of evidence, assault, and obstruction of justice." He held up a hand to silence Kara's protest. "Don't worry, I have a plan to ensure they don't get wind of it until the moment we're ready to strike." Kara's heart raced as she listened to the judge's proposal. It was a bold, risky move, but if it succeeded, it could finally bring an end to the board's reign of terror. "And what about me?" she asked. "How can I be sure they won't come after me again?" Judge Haywood's expression softened. "I'll arrange for you to be placed under the protection of the court until the trial," he assured her. "You'll be safe, I promise." Kara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. After the harrowing encounter at the courthouse, she had felt utterly powerless. But now, with the judge's help, she had a glimmer of hope. "When do we start?" she asked, her voice steady with determination. The judge's eyes gleamed with a steely resolve. "Immediately," he replied. "The time for action is now." The air was thick with tension as Kara watched the courthouse doors, her heart pounding in anticipation. Judge Haywood had assured her that the HOA board members would be arriving shortly, unaware of the trap that had been set for them. As the familiar faces of Mrs. Wilkins and her cronies came into view, Kara felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, their chance to finally bring these corrupt individuals to justice. The board members strode through the lobby, their expressions a mix of arrogance and impatience. Kara had to resist the urge to confront them right then and there, knowing that Judge Haywood's carefully laid plan was the only way to ensure their downfall. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd as two uniformed police officers emerged from the shadows, their badges glinting in the bright lights. "Mrs. Wilkins, Mr. Harrington, Ms. Nguyen," one of the officers bellowed, his voice commanding attention. "You are all under arrest for destruction of evidence, assault, and obstruction of justice." The board members froze, their eyes wide with shock and terror. Kara watched with a sense of vindication as they were handcuffed and led away, their protests and demands falling on deaf ears. As the commotion died down, Judge Haywood approached Kara, a satisfied smile on his face. "Well done, my dear," he said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your courage and perseverance have paid off. With their illegal actions exposed, the HOA board members will face the full consequences of their crimes." Kara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. After the harrowing ordeal she had endured, it was a relief to know that justice had finally been served. "Thank you, Judge Haywood," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without your help." The judge nodded, his expression grave. The battle is not over yet, he warned. These individuals have deep pockets and powerful connections. They will do everything in their power to fight these charges and regain control of the HOA. Kara's brow furrowed with determination. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady. I'll do whatever it takes to ensure they never threaten another homeowner again. Judge Haywood's eyes gleamed with respect. That's the spirit, my dear, he said with a nod. Now let's get to work on preparing for the trial of the century. The courtroom was electric with tension as Kara took the stand, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. After weeks of meticulous preparation with Judge Haywood, the moment of reckoning had finally arrived. As she recounted the harrowing events that had led her to this point, the petty citations, the destruction of her evidence, and the brutal assault at the courthouse, the jury listened with rapt attention. Kara's voice wavered at times, but she refused to be intimidated, her determination shining through. Across the room, the disgraced HOA board members sat in stony silence, their once arrogant demeanors now tinged with a hint of desperation. Their high-priced lawyers had pulled out all the stops, trying to poke holes in Kara's testimony and discredit the evidence presented by the prosecution. But Judge Haywood had been thorough. Every document, every witness, and every piece of physical evidence had been meticulously scrutinized and authenticated. The case against the board members was airtight, and Kara could see the growing unease on their faces as the trial progressed. As Kara stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom erupted in a swell of murmurs and whispers. The jurors exchanged pointed glances, their expressions unreadable. Kara's heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Had she done enough to convince them of the board's corruption? The closing arguments were passionate and fiery, with the prosecutor painting a vivid picture of the board's abuses of power, and the defense desperately attempting to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. Kara watched with bated breath, her fingers crossed beneath the wooden bench. Finally, the jury retired to deliberate, and the tension in the room became palpable. Kara could feel the eyes of the spectators, the court staff, and even the judge himself, all trained on her, waiting to see if justice would be served. As the minutes ticked by, Kara's mind raced with 1,000 different scenarios. Would the board members walk free, their crimes swept under the rug once more? Or would their downfall be the reckoning that Kara had fought so hard for? The suspense was agonizing, but Kara knew she had to remain steadfast. She had come too far to give up now. Whatever the outcome, she was determined to see this through to the end. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed back in, their expressions inscrutable. Kara felt her heart pounding in her chest, her palms sweaty with anticipation. This was the moment of truth. As the foreman rose to deliver the verdict, Kara held her breath, bracing herself for the worst. But when the words "guilty on all counts" rang out, she felt a surge of relief and triumph wash over her. The HOA board members went pale, their faces contorted with disbelief and fury. Kara couldn't help but savor the sight, the weight of their crimes finally catching up to them. As the judge handed down the sentences, lengthy prison terms and hefty fines, Kara felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served, and the corrupt board members would no longer be able to terrorize innocent homeowners. As she left the courthouse, Kara couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had been through hell, but she had emerged victorious. The backup documents, the judge's unwavering support, and her own unwavering determination had all played a crucial role in bringing down the HOA board. Kara knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The board members would undoubtedly appeal the verdict, and she would have to remain vigilant to ensure that their conviction stood. But for now, she allowed herself to bask in the glow of her hard-won victory. As she walked home, Kara couldn't help but reflect on the lessons she had learned. Never underestimate the power of a backup plan, the importance of allies, and the strength of one's own resolve. These were the weapons that had enabled her to triumph over the corrupt and powerful HOA board. Kara knew that her fight was far from over. There were countless other homeowners out there, struggling under the weight of HOA tyranny. But with the success of this case as a blueprint, she was determined to continue her crusade for justice and hold those in power accountable. The future may have been uncertain, but Kara was ready to face it head-on. After all, she had proven that even the most daunting challenges could be overcome with a little ingenuity, a lot of courage, and a reliable backup plan.